This is Pastor Jeff Chavis. I'm the pastor of Church Online, an online community of faith, and we are located at churchonline.com, but we spell that uniquely, CHRCH, churchonline.com. We say all that's missing is you. This morning, I'm thinking about success. Success seems to be such a big thing in our society, and that, begs the question, do we consider ourselves a success? Have we been successful in life? Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "The line between failure and success is so fine that we scarcely know when we pass it. It's so fine that we're often on the line and we don't know it." That kind of struck me as funny. The idea that we just don't even know, are we successful? Have we become successful? I guess it matters how we measure success. Of course, in our society and our culture, it seems like we measure success based on dollar signs. How many numbers do you have on your paycheck? Maybe we measure success by where we live, what kind of house, what kind of neighborhood. Maybe we measure success based on the car we drive, the clothes we wear. But Jesus would disagree with all of our measures of success. How do I know that? It's in Luke chapter 12, verse 15. By the way, this is some of the red letters of Jesus. And he said to them, "Take heed, beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." Ooh, that really shoots a hole in our modern day measures of success. It's not about the abundance of the things we possess. In fact, that word, take heed and beware of covetousness, greed. It seems as if many of our measures of success are prideful, based in greed. So then how, as a follower of Jesus, should we measure success? Well, that verse is part of a larger teaching that Jesus does. There are two men that come to Jesus, and one of them, they're brothers, and they're arguing over some kind of an inheritance. We don't know the information. We don't know what the inheritance might be. We might have an idea, but they come to Jesus and says, the one brother says, "Tell my brother to divide the inheritance." In other words, give me what is due to me. And Jesus tells them first, "Who made me judge and arbiter over you?" And then he says about that line that we just read, "Take heed, beware of covetousness." Clearly, one brother, maybe both brothers, pride, greed has snuck in. And Jesus points out it's not about the abundance of the things that we possess. And then he gives them this parable. Let me read this again. Luke chapter 12, this is 16 through 21. "And then he spoke this parable to them. The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, 'What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops?' So he said, 'I'll do this. I'll pull down my barns, build greater, and there I will store my crops and my goods, and I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease. Eat, drink, and be merry.'" Famous line. But think about the picture that Jesus is painting. Here's a man that we would consider successful. Everyone around him in the first century would have said, "This man is successful." That first line, his ground has yielded plentifully. Now, in the first century mindset that Jesus lived, they equated success with God's blessing. They would say that this man clearly was doing God's will, in the will of God, being blessed by God, because his ground is yielding plenty. And then he gets this thought in his mind, "I have so much, what am I going to do? Well, I know, I'll build some barns, I'll store more, I'll gain more." Again, we would think of his measure of success in all of this. But Jesus has some harsh words. Let me keep going. Verse 20, "But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided?' So is he who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich toward God." Pause and think about what Jesus is saying. First, this man who has spent his lifetime being successful has come to a great place where he could just sort of kick back and enjoy the fruits of his labor. But Jesus says then the Lord demands his life of him. In other words, he's going to die. And then who's going to get all this stuff? Who's going to gain the possessions? No. Jesus makes this really incredible. Verse 21 is so key, and again, should be key to our understanding of how we measure success. So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. It seems like what Jesus is trying to get us to see is it's not about the stuff we're laying up for ourselves. It's what we're doing for others. Because that statement, rich toward God, a couple of verses down, he tells his disciples, sell your possessions, give to the poor, provide purses for yourself that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will not fail, where no thief comes in, no moth or rust destroys. So the treasure in heaven is not about gold, is not about the goods. It's not even about the glory, the fame. What could possibly be the treasure in the kingdom? What is this thing about being rich toward God? If you think about it, there is only one thing that has value in the kingdom. I mean, tremendous value in the kingdom. And that's people. It's people that God has stewarded us with. Think about it. You must have someone in your life, even if it's a neighbor, someone you see at the store. You may not have family around you, but there has to be some people, a coworker, friends. These are all things that God has stewarded you with. And to be rich toward them is not storing up treasure for myself, but giving, having a generous heart. But let's take that even a step further. Our goal ultimately is to see people in the kingdom, building the kingdom, not with brick and mortar, but with people. That is the only thing that has value in the kingdom. We're not taking anything in this life with us, any of the possessions that we have. The only thing that we could possibly take with us into the kingdom is other people. So that's what we think of when we think of these words, success. A successful person in the kingdom, in the mindset of God, is a person who has lots of people around him, is generous to other people, is a friend to other people, and occasionally seeing those individuals won to Christ. Individuals that have those conversations. Once in a while, doesn't have to be every day, but once in a while we have those conversations that lead other people to want to follow Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Are we being rich toward God this day? Are we successful in the things that matter to Him?